This is the Mike LiPetri Show. Park Strategies is the premier full-service lobbying firm helping businesses and nonprofits cut through federal, state, or local red tape. You've got a state licensing issue? Call Park Strategies. You're vying for government funding? Call Park Strategies. You're looking to stop a government regulation? Call Park Strategies. Park Strategies, your strategic partner for success. Go to parkstrategies.com for more info. Nassau County property taxes are way too high. That's why you need Reassessment and Evaluation Services, Inc., the #1 tax grievance provider that offers personal service and high success rates. Grieve your taxes now before the deadline on March 1st, 2024. Call today for more info, 516-742-5180, or apply online at reassessmytaxes.com. Wow. We have with us the man, the legend, Sheriff Errol Toulon Jr. of Suffolk County. The Suffolk County Sheriff is here in studio. Look at this. You look so dapper in our studio today. I'm so excited to have you come on. Thank you so much for coming and welcome.
Thank you for having me on. I had to get dressed up for you.
I appreciate that. You know, you always show me up every single time we go somewhere. We're in places at events, and there you are, just looking at top 10, and it just makes me feel like a 7, and I don't like that. You know, I'm not used to that, but you're somebody that just always stands out, and I think you stand out in multiple ways, where it's not just whether it be how you dress, but also your character, your persona, your dedication to the people and the community throughout Suffolk County. I mean, it's been a privilege to know you, and somebody that I consider as a true friend, because just dating back to when you were first elected in 2017 and then reelected in 2021, you have been somebody that's done what you promised, which is dedicating your service to the public service. You are the definition of that. And for me, I've witnessed it firsthand when I was a state legislator, and you had then Governor Cuomo during the whole pandemic situation saying, we're gonna order the sheriff and the deputies to go into your home during Thanksgiving, and you could only have 10 people. 10 people was your limit. Meanwhile, despite the facts that you had the whole Home Depot and Targets, all that having their crowds, but they were saying the homes. And you said no. You're like, no, that's ridiculous. Enjoy Thanksgiving. You remember that?
I do, and it was very difficult because it's my own party, of course, and I ruffled a lot of feathers. But what's more important to me, especially around that time, was that people, especially during the pandemic, were able to gather, be with their loved ones, celebrate that one day, and this sheriff's office was not going to adhere to anything that then governor was going to say.
And it shows you how Suffolk County appreciated that, and that's why they sent you back again in 2021 when they reelected you, because they knew you were a man that had true heart and true character, and that's something that I see about you, and I want my viewers and listeners to see and hear and learn from you about all of what you've done, and even your path forward, where you're somebody that has just battled, where you battled, frankly, your entire life, really. I mean, and I admire that, where it's just getting to where you are. It's truly a privilege to chat with you about today, of all that you've accomplished now as sheriff, the changes that you've instituted, but then also your priorities going forward and what you want to see. I mean, how has that been? And I just got to say, this yellow on here, there's no correlation, before we get started, there's no correlation with the Pittsburgh Penguins, right? Because you would never, ever do something, you would never do something like that, right? To have Pittsburgh Penguins, because you're not like a Pittsburgh Penguin fan, right? No, you don't. You're more of like a hardcore, Ranger fan or Islander fan, right?
I think the Rangers last won their cup in 1994, so I do stand with the black, yellow, and gold.
For those of you who don't know, that's sarcasm. This man is hardcore Penguins fan, and this guy you guys see him with hockey, he's all in, and it's absolutely hilarious with watching him with the game, because he's all in, baby. He's all in. Just like how your heart and dedication is to people. Damn, that's how you are for those Penguins. But anyway, so what are some of your accomplishments since 2020? It's 2017. It's been 6 years now.
Right.
And how have you seen, what was the sheriff's office before you took over to what it is today?
It looked like the sheriff's office table of organization, the way it was staffed, was dated back to the 1950s and really didn't focus on what was occurring in 2018 when I took office. And so what I mean by that, the staff training, I didn't feel was sufficient. We really needed to make sure that our staff was trained properly, because how can I hold anyone accountable if they're not trained properly? So we've increased the training for our staff twofold, because we really wanted to make sure that supervisors were better prepared to supervise those that they were working for them. And more importantly, correction officers and deputy sheriffs knew that their responsibilities better, and we're looking at training across the United States, not just local training, to see what is the best training that we can bring to our staff. When we looked at those that were incarcerated, we really needed to make sure that we can assist them when they return back to our community, because 85% of the men and women in Riverhead and Yaphank are returning back. Only 15% are going to a state prison. So why not try to help them while they're in our custody? Governor Cuomo implemented Raise the Age. Mm-hmm. So we created a program for Choose Your Path for 18 to 26-year-old males, where they can actually embark on not only work a 40-hour workday inside of our jails, but landscaping, carpentry, small engine repair, resume building, parenting skills, anger management, electrical, HVAC, plumbing, and solar, with skills that we brought to the jail so that they would be better prepared when they leave us. We created a program called Choose to Thrive for our female inmates. All of them were housed in our Riverhead facility. We moved half of them to our Yaphank facility and brought in ECLI, Empowerment Collaborative of Long Island, and New Hour for Women and Children to bring services to assist these women. Coupled upon that, we realized that many of the women that are in our custody are sex workers.
Oh, wow. I didn't know.
Have been victims of human trafficking.
And is that prevalent in Suffolk County, sex trafficking and sex workers?
Well, the reason why it was even brought to my attention is because I met with our federal authorities regarding gang-related issues in Suffolk County, and they told me that they were more concerned about human trafficking. So I knew that we had a high probability of women who were sex workers or trafficking victims, and sought to see what we could do to help them. And needless to say, we didn't know anything about the Gilgo Beach Task Force, and I know you want to get to that later, but we did start to ask questions around things that we heard from other law enforcement people or even media accounts. We've created a resource center for our inmates where we've identified correction officers who may have had teaching degrees or teaching backgrounds to supplement the learning experience for those that are pursuing an equivalency diploma when BOCES leaves our facility, and they needed extra help. We had staff that were able to do that. I think the last thing, which is probably more prevalent, is our START Resource Center. Because many times, as I learned, I spent 25 years working on Rikers Island, is the fact that once they leave our custody, there's no resources to help them. And in Suffolk County, transportation is a big issue amongst many people. And so what we did was, the minute someone's incarcerated, we start their reentry on day one, find out where they're at. We create an individualized reentry plan.
Reentry with the community.
Reentry, right, into the community, so that when they return back, they know where the resources are in their community. We've connected them so that they can get a birth certificate, their driver's license, employment, housing, where they can go for mental health issues or even substance abuse issues. We provide them through donations 2 weeks of non-perishable foods. We also supply personal hygiene items for them so that they have personal hygiene items. So, we really want to make that not as more difficult experience than it is when they're being discharged from a jail.
Yeah, I find that, it's a fine line. You're trying to figure out where, okay, at the same time, you want to make sure that those who are in jail don't come back. But then obviously it's tough with public appeal and to get the public behind you to say, we have to supply them these services while in jail. Because then people are saying, well, these are criminals. Why should they get all this, especially when it's public funds? So I find that very appealing, is that, or heartwarming, that it's through donations thereafter as they leave to supply them these extra supplies to prepare them, because ultimately that's the goal, right? You don't want them coming back. You want to have it reducing the population.
Right, exactly. And one of the things, if you think about it, if we're successful, and you're right, through donations, and also we have not increased our operating budget 1 cent for any of the programs I just discussed with you. But more importantly, if a person comes out better than when they came in, that's potentially one less victim in our community.
Right.
So from a public safety standpoint, we have a safer community.
And that's exactly what you want. And that's tremendous to see how you have not increased the costs, but yet provided all these additional services. How did you do that?
I have a really good staff that was able to work with our community-based partners who were able to bring in resources into the jail. We would not be able to do this without our community partners.
It's a whole team. I mean,
Exactly.
That's key. I mean, that's exactly it. I find it impressive in the sense of providing all those extra services. How did you get the public to buy in?
I think when people realize that if there's a potential for any man or woman to leave jail and commit a crime again when they get back out, no one wants to feel unsafe. And so all of these programs are not taxpayer-based.
Mm-hmm.
We have not asked for more correctional officers to provide for these resources. And I think people start to realize, especially those that have individuals in their families that have mental health or substance abuse, which everybody's touched by, or you know someone that's been touched by, everybody wants to help these individuals. And so no one wants these men and women incarcerated because jails are the biggest provider of those that have substance abuse and those that have mental health, because there aren't enough treatment facilities for them. So unfortunately, jail is where it's at because they wind up committing a crime. So many people, when you think about the tax dollars that we're saving if someone doesn't reoffend, and then now the tax base doesn't go up because we have a high population that's incarcerated.
Do you see a large portion of your population is mentally ill?
Absolutely. Over 60% are diagnosed with mental health issues.
Before coming in or diagnosed in the jail?
When they come to us, because we wouldn't know their history before unless they were previously incarcerated.
Right. And so is that something that's typical, is when someone comes in, they get diagnosed, or is that more discretionary?
No, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, when someone enters our facility, they're going to see medical staff, and medical staff will then make that determination whether mental health staff should review them. Now, if they get past medical staff and now they're in the housing area for a couple of weeks or months and something starts to go awry with their case or personal relationship and they start to act differently, the correctional officer can make a mental health referral where they would see a mental health professional.
How has the relationship been between correctional officers and inmates? Because that must be that's such a tough. I mean, you were there for you were as a correctional officer 25 years, you said?
Started as a correctional officer, finished as a deputy commissioner. But it is extremely challenging for the men and women that work inside the jails because you never know when you're getting stuck. So you may have to work 16 hours. You never know what type of population you're dealing with. You don't know if that person just got off the phone because their lawyer just told them that their case is going bad and they may do more time than what they anticipated. Their wife may be telling them that they're sleeping with their brother and now they're pissed off.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different issues that men and women inside the jails are faced with.
How do you, as the sheriff, try to boost morale or control that temperament among your officers? Because I'd find that extremely tough. Not specifically any day. It could be something that could be so simple or something that could be extremely dangerous, depending on the inmates that they may interact with. And so how do you as the sheriff cultivate that environment where making sure that your correctional officers are composed and those deputy sheriffs are all composed with whatever situation they encounter?
I try to talk to my staff. I try to tour all the facilities that I'm responsible for. But when I'm walking through the jails, there probably isn't a circumstance that we're going to encounter I have not encountered when I worked in New York City. From riots, hostage situations, escapes, guns inside the jail where one inmate shooting another. I think I've experienced it all, from inmates hanging each other, inmates killing each other. So, I'm used to that, and being able to talk the same lingo and the staff understand that I went through the same experience that they may be encountering is really just trying to put them at ease that we'll get through this and we're going to get through it together. You're not doing it by yourself.
See, and that's the thing. That's where you get the respect, because you're somebody that went through the trenches right there with them from day one, building out yourself. And that's where a lot of people can respect you now as the sheriff, because it's just as you said, you've seen it, you've been there, you've endured it, and you've overcome it, and that you're with them. You're not See, I think that's so important as an executive, in any position. You're never ahead of someone, never in front of someone. You're standing right beside them. Every person that you work with on that team of yours in Suffolk County is right with you. There is no such thing as one person ahead of the other. And I think that's true leadership. And that's something that you illustrate through your actions and through your character, which is something that you should be very proud of. Mm-hmm. And I give you credit with, because that is something that's a testament to who you are. And I'm sure I know that those within Suffolk County are very appreciative of that. And I love that about you. So now going forward, priorities. Where do you want to see Suffolk County corrections? Where do you want to see your deputy sheriff? Where do you want to see that going forward? What are some next steps for you that are priorities?
We have major challenges when we just talk about the deputy sheriffs, first of all, with the fact that with the moratorium on evictions, trying to catch up on evictions, because it was a 2.5 year lapse of doing evictions. So now we have to catch up, and it causes a lot of stress. There's a lot of stress on people in our communities who are on the verge of losing their home or being displaced. So we have to be understanding of that because of different circumstances that many people have encountered. Yet we still have a job to do because we have a court order. The red flag laws, the deputies walk into some very dangerous situations when they're ordered by the courts because of some mental health issue that a firearm needs to be removed until a review can happen. And so, I want to make sure that my staff are safe. On the corrections side, we're very proud. We started a corrections intelligence center, and this is the unique thing. We are pretty much the hub of about 50 jurisdictions throughout the United States, including El Salvador, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, the UK, and Australia, in information that's coming into jails and prisons internationally and nationally, and we're disseminating that information to 50 partners throughout the United States, from Texas to California, Nevada, Chicago, Minnesota, New Jersey, Florida, Virginia, Delaware. So we're pretty much a hub, and we're looking to grow this information. So, I'm really proud of the staff because they've embraced some of the initiatives that I've wanted to implement, and they've really taken it beyond my expectations.
How did you become a hub? How does that even happen? Like how did you take control of that to take the lead on that, in that direction?
So when we created the center, we had us, meaning the sheriff's office, Nassau County, New York City Corrections, Westchester, Rockland, New York State, and I believe New Brunswick, New Jersey. As we started to talk to other partners, or they started to hear about this, many said, we want to be part of it. So now what they've done is assign a staff member. Of course, they have to attend meetings virtually or telephonically, but we're really looking to bring this hub. We've had requests from a jurisdiction in Oregon asking us about certain things that we may be occurring, and we've learned things also. We've have a gang in New York City, in the Bronx, that was putting fentanyl into the ink cartridges.
Oh my God.
And then it would then come onto the paper, so then when they would mail it into the jail, the fentanyl is on the paper with the ink. That inmate, because fentanyl is almost 10 to 15 times more in value in the jails than it is on the street, and what they do is cut the paper up and sell them, and that's how they make their money.
No way.
Yeah.
I would never even and that's through all your center that discovered that.
Yes.
That's impressive. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
That's great. So you want to build out on this now, is going forward, and grow that?
Right. What we're looking at doing is, first, we're in a mobile trailer outside of our Yaphank facility. We've identified a larger space that we're going to be moving it to, but really probably set
Did you just say in a trailer?
Yeah, we're in a trailer.
You're doing all this out of a trailer?
Yeah.
What? How's
It's the best the county could do.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be moving soon.
Yeah, we better be moving. I mean, especially with all the different jurisdictions that you're working with and what you've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, it's incredible what the staff has done. I had a vision, and they have just really surpassed my expectations with it.
I love that. So now you'll be moving into a bigger center, a real center.
With technological advances, and also be able to have more partners in the room.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have computers in this center, right? Or knowing you're just using a fax machine and
No,
do still do this?
We actually still have a Smith Corona typewriter.
That's what I'm saying. What was going on here? I use this guy's. I love that. You're able to just get information, and you got 1950s technology doing it. I'm excited to see what's going to happen when you get 2024 technology next year.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be. I would hope so. We're going to be getting doubling those different jurisdictions. So you're building out the center. You're growing here, and you're really booming, and that's what I love to see. And now it's been the next steps where not only of what you're able to do, but now you get thrown into this national issue with this guy over in the alleged Gilgo Beach killer, and you're the one that's responsible. I mean, wow, right? I mean, this is a moment where it's like nothing you could have even figured out. You looked at it years ago, and now you're seeing these developments. I mean, what's going through your mind when all this is going on?
Well, when I knew about 6 weeks before the actual arrest that this guy was going to be arrested and also come into our custody, I needed to start to formulate a plan of how we were going to deal with him. Fortunately, I did have the experience of dealing with a John Gotti or a Bernard Goetz, people of big notoriety, inside New York City, Robert Chambers.
Yeah.
So what I did was try to put together the best correctional practices that really wasn't going to fiscally implement or impact us as far as staffing, and figure out just how we can do this, how we can move him, how we can keep him safe. Because the most important thing is to make sure that justice is served in the courts.
Absolutely.
And not inside of my jails, because we've seen other people killed from Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Or did he get killed or did he just die?
No comment.
Okay. So, Jeffrey Epstein, Larry Nassar, Whitey Bulger.
Yeah.
So people have
That's
been
right,
seriously
Whitey Bulger,
injured
yeah.
or killed in jail. And, we want to make sure that this doesn't happen on our watch.
So now he gets arrested. What are the next steps? What is the plan that you formulated? How do you execute it properly? He gets escorted to Suffolk County in Riverhead, correct?
Correct.
And where does it go from there?
So we assigned a cell for him, and because he was on suicide watch when he first came into our custody, of course he had no sheets, he had no shoestrings.
Right. You have to be aware of all that.
He was in a protective vest, and it was all new to him. He slept a lot the first week. And then he became more and more acclimated, especially after he came off of suicide watch, participating in various services, going to recreation, where he's not really recreating other than walking around the yard. He's not shooting a basketball. He's not doing pull-ups, dips, sit-ups, not doing sprints.
He didn't look like he was physically suited to do either that anyway, but it's okay.
No comment. But he does go and he gets his recreation time. He does make phone calls. He sends mail out. He receives mail. He has visits from his attorney. He participates in our law library. He participates in our rehabilitation where he takes books out.
Does he have? Is this all solo? Is this isolated, or because although you come off of suicide watch, you still have to be guarded against any other inmates, what they may be doing. Correct.
Correct. As of now, everything is still by himself. When he goes to yard, when he moves throughout the facility, we shut the facility down so there's no inmate movement, because we don't know who could possibly take any liberties on him. And so we're very careful of who's around him, including staff. We want to make sure that there's no staff, because, listen, staff are curious too. Some people may just want to take a peek and see, well, what does this guy look like? Yep. So, we really have made sure our staff who are not assigned to that area do not go in that area.
Right, making sure they're still respecting their duties and their jobs and not making it like a viewing of like a zoo.
Correct.
Yeah, which is the key. I mean, there's still humanity that you have to maintain and establish, and specifically professionalism that you always want to impose upon your officers. So that's admirable as well. How does it work with this scheduling? I mean, how many inmates do you have right now total?
I believe we had 937 this morning.
937. Yeah. So I mean.
And that's between Riverhead and Yaphank, not just the Riverhead facility.
Is he in the Riverhead now?
Yes.
Yes. So you're looking at that amount, but there's one individual you have to basically move the schedule around, correct? Can that be daunting?
No, it's really not, because he's not the first one that we've had to move with stopping all inmate movement or providing special security measures to make sure that person is okay. We've had, most recently we had Valva.
Right, that's true.
And before me, there were others that many of my staff have mentioned that they've had to house. So using
That's fair.
coupling the experience of the men and women that currently work in the sheriff's office with my experience in New York City, we came up with a game plan.
How long is suicide watch? How long does that last?
Well, that lasts as long as mental health staff deems it. So once they determine that he was not have any suicidal ideations, he was removed off of suicide watch, and if all things being equal, he'd be in general population, but that's not the case.
Right. So in this circumstance, and do you have is it round the clock monitoring even when he's in the cell? How does that work? Is there a guard outside or officer? How does that? I'm just trying to envision kind of the setup.
Right. So just like any other housing area where there are correctional officer or correctional officers that work in that particular housing area, there is one or two, depending on the time of day and depending on what's going on, correctional officers that are observing him.
Interesting. I find that fascinating. And then for the pendency of his court case, he'll be with you, correct?
Correct.
Until then, once sentencing occurs, and then how would transportation be done from where he goes for prison, presuming that he's found guilty?
Right. So we have specially trained deputy sheriffs that would make that transport to the state prison.
Interesting. Speaking of transport, and this is something that I found, so now separate from focusing on Rex, now with different criminal justice initiatives that have been implemented over time, and I just wanted to just ask you about, you spoke about briefly raise the age earlier, and I was hoping you can talk more on that subject matter, because there's raise the age and then there's bail reform. Those are two state laws that were recently in the past few years voted on, signed into law, and have radically affected your job and what you're able to do. Can you elaborate on how raise the age has kind of changed the game? Because I don't think people really understand even what it is, how that's affected the public, how it's affected your population, and trying to still navigate through these the different age groups and the dynamic between the two.
When then Governor Cuomo implemented raise the age, the one thing that the state didn't take account for was that there were no facilities for the 16 and 17-year-olds. And so now what's happening is that many jails, like ours here in Suffolk County, if we're not able to find a bed throughout New York State, and if you think about this, a 16-year-old kid is being transported to Erie County because that's the only bed. So now if you think about that, so how is this legislation benefiting the kid by not being in jail? And I understand the jail portion of it, but being in a vehicle for probably 6 hours, because you got to go up and get him, bring him back down, then bring him or her back up. They're not with their family. They're not with their friends. They're not making phone calls. The social isolation is to a bare minimum. How does that help the child? And so because in certain circumstances we can't even find a bed throughout New York State, we have to block off an entire area in the facility to house these young men, which means, they're not supposed to have sight or sound of any adult population. They're not supposed to hear the adults. That's why even when they go to court, you have to keep them separate from adults. It's really not working, I think, the way Governor Cuomo had anticipated, because first of all, it's not beneficial to the taxpayers, because I'm paying my deputies a lot of money for this transport up and back.
Yeah.
And they have to wait for them in court to bring them back. These kids are not with their families, not getting the support that they need to hopefully change their mindset and hopefully have better behavior. So I'm still kind of lost as to implementing this legislation and not having the proper facilities built for them to be housed.
What's a recommended solution?
Well, currently the state the current governor is planning on building a site in Suffolk County where they can house, and I think we may be able to get refunded from Nassau if we house any Nassau County 16 or 17-year-olds. So it would be beneficial for some family that has a 16 or 17-year-old that's incarcerated, where a mother or father or grandparents don't have to travel all the way up to Erie County to see their loved one.
Right, keeping them in the community as opposed to just having that isolation and separation, which could only just exacerbate certain underlying criminal traits, essentially, which I find that unique. So we have that raise the age where we need the facilities here if we're going to house them in order to keep them separate, in order to keep them to develop them and hopefully reduce their returning. Now, we also have bail reform. Bail reform was like a whole thing, but that before bail reform, you spoke about the population size that you have right now of those incarcerated. What was the difference between before and after of those incarcerated, the amount?
So when I first took office, we were a little under 1,400. By January 1st of 2020, when it was actually implemented, the bail reform legislation, we were down to 1,000. Of course, 2020 was COVID, and
Yes.
so by July we were down to 425.
Wow.
And then, it steadily has increased since then.
Wow, that's almost 1,000 person
Yeah.
reduction.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, with that change, how have you seen? What are your thoughts on the law? Is there anything? What do you recommend? Any change that need to be made to that in order to make a safer community? What are your thoughts on that?
If someone is a first-time offender for a misdemeanor crime,
Right.
looking at the crime, I think that there should be some consideration. But anything above that, we need to make sure that the judges have the discretion to say whether someone should be incarcerated. That's why they're in office. That's why we elect them. Let them make that determination. I don't think through legislation of people who don't understand the criminal justice system, who may be a little bit more liberal than others, really don't even take into account the victims of the crimes. Which all of these legislations, nobody has spoke to the victims of these crimes. And that's something that has to be done because there are victims. There are people that have been traumatized. People have been hurt. People have been killed. And I think we need to make sure that anyone who commits a crime is held accountable. And I don't think that we're doing it right now.
Yeah, I would like to see that focus on the victims as priority first. I'm hoping that dangerousness gets implemented in the legislation as an amendment, some semblance to allow judges the discretion ultimately. But you've also seen, as a result of that, because you've had less inmates, you've also seen a reduction in your correctional officer population, correct?
So yes, we have, and it really is not because of bail reform. It's because of the salary. Correctional officers should be paid more than what they're currently making, and so many individuals take our job, and then move over to become a deputy sheriff because they can retire sooner, or go to Nassau Suffolk Police Department because they're being paid more. We recently had a deputy sheriff who was a New York City police officer come to become a deputy sheriff and went back to the New York City Police Department. And because he was gone for more than a year, had to go through the entire academy all over again.
And still chose that direction.
He's still there, yes.
Yeah, what's the pay right now for a starting correctional officer?
$33,000.
What do you think it should be?
I would say start off at least with 45 or 50.
Yeah, just something like that.
Right.
And it's a step progress as time.
Unfortunately, it's 12 steps.
12 steps.
12 steps currently to get to about 120, 125.
What do you want to see? Do you want to see that reduced?
I would say reduce it to at least 6 or 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so cut that in half.
Right.
Is that going to be under the counties or states authority?
No, that's the counties.
That's all counties.
County, correct.
County authority.
Right.
Oh, that would be huge. I mean, because that's important. You got to retain. You got to first attract and then retain.
Right.
And if you're not seeing that, then long term, then what?
Long term, all we do is we have a turnover. You have inexperienced staff, inexperienced supervisors, because some of them may hang on long enough to become supervisors, but they don't have much time in the ranks to really understand what it's like to be or what it should be being a supervisor. So those are the challenges we have to develop the men and women that are working for us to make sure that they're best prepared for the responsibilities that they're given.
Well, I think that the men and women that you represent appreciate your advocacy and your position to say this is what they should be getting, and I'm going to fight to the death to make sure that they get it. And I think that's incredible of what as a leader you need to be to make sure that the people know that you're there for them.
And equally, our deputy sheriffs are underpaid also. Their starting salary is basically the same, and they should be increased. Many people don't realize that deputy sheriffs are police officers. They go through the same 6 to 7 month police academy as all the other law enforcement police officers, here in Suffolk County. And so, raising their pay and also reducing the amount of steps, would be beneficial to the office because it's just a turnover that I've seen continually since I started in 2018.
Where's their pay at?
About the same, about 30.
About the same thing.
33,
Same thing with the same
34,000.
steps?
Correct.
Yeah, see, and that's important. People don't realize that the sheriffs are the ones, you hear it all the time, like you just talked about the eviction or the red flag, et cetera. They're the ones that need to execute on these different court orders and whatnot. So people don't realize that you have these officers that need to do this, and if you don't have it, then it's going to create a whole cog in the system, right?
Right.
And that's what people forget about. I mean, it's all multifaceted, multidimensional in the sense of how it impacts the justice system and as well as, frankly, the economy as a whole.
Right. And, the deputy sheriffs, we have a warrant division. So anyone that has an outstanding warrant, they're going after them. We have a domestic violence, which is very, domestic violence is probably one of the most dangerous things.
Super dangerous.
For a law enforcement person. So, if you think about what they go through and what could potentially happen, their lives can be lost instantaneously. And I think there should be a little greater respect for the job that they do.
100%. Before we finish, Sheriff, I mean, there's something that I really wanted to talk to you about is that you just went to El Salvador to learn all about gangs and what's going on there in South. And I think so many people would appreciate just what you did, why you did it, and what you learned from it, which would be super impressive. I mean, how long were you there for?
So I was there for 5 days, and I should start off by saying in 2018, April, I visited El Salvador for the first time. Horrific conditions. Public safety, you can see, was the residents of El Salvador were extremely fearful. The jails were overrun. It was really a country that was just in constant turmoil.
Totally.
Now, under the new president, Bukele, you can see it's a total change. I was able to visit with the International Law Enforcement Academy. We have a U.S. partner and an El Salvadorian partner. It's only 6 centers in the world. El Salvador has one, New Mexico. I believe Venezuela has a third. I don't know where the other 3 are. I was able to meet with the police commissioner, and they gave us a whole rundown of what they're doing with MS-13 and 18th Street, who's their rival gang.
And they did, and also, sorry to interrupt you, but they also had this built, you went in 18, what was
Right.
it? And now they built the super prison, right?
Which I was fortunate enough to visit.
Oh, all right. I'm an idiot for interrupting. Continue.
No, that's okay. So I and Kevin Catalina, who's my undersheriff, are the only 2, from what we're told, Americans to visit this prison.
That's awesome.
And I can tell you it's something I've never seen before in my life. And I know there are many human rights advocates that are against what's going on in that prison, but when you meet 5 or 6 guys that are incarcerated and they were playing soccer with someone's head, a human head, you have to scratch your head. Well, maybe they need to do some desperate things because it's desperate times. So you walk into this prison, and there are 41 cells. Picture 21 on each side. It is as long as a New York City block.
Wow.
In each cell are between 60 to 70 people.
No way.
No mattresses, no phone calls, no commissary, no mail, no visits.
How big was this cell?
The cell was huge.
Okay.
It goes almost 5 bunks high. Only 2 toilets in the cell.
Oh, my God.
No showers. There is a bathing area. They're only allowed to wear undershirts and underwear. That is it. When we were escorted into this housing area, the military escorted us in with submachine guns. All the correction officers are still wearing face coverings like they were in 18 because they're fearful of these gang members
learning who they are.
Because in 2018, by April when I visited, there were already 87 law enforcement people killed.
They targeted them
and identifying their voice. Some of them disguised their voice. Military was not afraid. They walked in.
They're ready to go.
There was no covering, and they had their submachine guns. They were ready to.
Those guys are just ready to rip it. If you even want to look at us the wrong way,
right,
then we're just gonna go after. There's no questions asked.
Right. There's no cell phone towers around the jail because previously phones were being smuggled in, food was being smuggled in, prostitutes were being smuggled in. Now it's a totally different environment, and you can see the way the country is. The few restaurants I went to, when you asked someone that was seated at the table next to me, or you asked the server, what do they think about the president? Everybody loves him. He has a 92% approval rate in the country,
Which is like unheard of.
a 96% approval rate for his security plan. And you can just see, I had to go to a Sears in the mall in El Salvador to pick up something. And I can tell you, I thought I was in a mall in the U.S. Beautiful, bright, people, the economy was thriving. It's a totally different place. Even their training, when I went to the police academy to look at the training, the state of the art, their firearm simulation was state of the art.
Really?
Their range, I mean, they also implement all new police officers have to learn English because of the tourism.
Okay.
So the police officer that was with me was only out of the academy for a year. She was one of our translators wherever we went.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. By the way, you just said smuggled in prostitutes. How do you smuggle in a prostitute?
I guess back then they just walked in through the front door.
This is a person.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's just one thing that went through my head about that. But so with now you see this technology, this training, basically the zero nonsense approach. What did you learn that you could now bring back and implement in Suffolk County?
So one of the things is establishing this great relationship, because as we learn more and more things about El Salvador, because that country has become so safe, where do you think MS-13 and 18th Street are fleeing? Honduras, Ecuador, and the United States. And so for us, we want to make sure that we have a partner in El Salvador that we can communicate with if we see different trends, if we see different gang signs, if we see different tattoos, if we see graffiti. We want to be able to work with the El Salvadorian government to identify these trends and see what's occurring. So our goal, and I guess when you ask me one of the things I learned, I think, we have a heavy Hispanic population in Suffolk County. Maybe my deputy sheriffs and correctional officers need to learn at least some Spanish in the academy so that, listen, I may have two gang members talking in a housing area, and if they're talking in Spanish, we don't know.
Right.
But maybe if there's a week of some sort of training that it may alert someone. If a deputy sheriff needs to communicate to a motorist or someone in the community that's Spanish speaking, maybe that we can bridge that gap. So that was one of the things that I learned. Also, when you asked me about the salaries of correctional officers and deputy sheriffs, the president tripled the salary of law enforcement to avoid corruption.
Right. The bribes.
Yes.
You have the gang members offer you, hey, how much you making? I'll give you that.
Exactly.
I'll give you that in a day or whatever. Just
Right.
let me out. So then, as a result of that, it made it. I wonder, did they have the numbers of like the average bribe was, and then they said, okay, we're gonna blow this out of the water, so that there's no even thought about it. Did they have that by any chance?
No, that they didn't. And I can tell you the rate of homicides, and I can't recall the numbers, have been dramatic. I would say 70-80% reduced in the homicides from 2018 when I was there until 3 weeks ago when I was there.
That's impressive. I mean, and that's what people want to see, right? They ultimately want a safe community, and it's about. And that's amazing. No one else has seen that. No one else has made the venture. No one else made the journey.
Not recently, and I don't know if anyone else has. For me, it was more to learn what was doing, because the Minister of Justice actually spoke at the Suffolk County Sheriff's Gang Conference last year. That's where we were introduced to him. And so I've kept in dialogue with him over the course of the last year. And I wanted to see firsthand the changes that were made there. And they were not lying about anything. That country is very safe. I was actually able to wear my uniform proudly, not only through the streets of El Salvador, into the police academy, into the International Law Enforcement Academy. Basically, everywhere I went, I wore my uniform, and very proud to do that, where I probably would have been very reluctant and fearful in 2018 if I would have did that.
I would have been walking around with a bulletproof vest, let alone the uniform. I mean, I can't believe that. But it shows you that change and dimension. And it must have been a true experience to see that for 5 days. How far is the super prison or mega? What's the actual mega prison?
It's called CECOT. CECOCT.
CECOCT. CECOT. God, I'm gonna say mega prison.
Okay.
All right. How far is that from the community or the towns or the cities?
It's pretty isolated, and as you get close, I would say within a mile of CECOT, that's where your cell phone coverage starts to lose. You do not have, within a mile of it. So as we approach that 1 mile marker,
Yes.
my cell phone
As you approach the mile to then get.
get there.
Wow.
Right. That's where my cell phone coverage went on me. I didn't have any cell phone
At that
availability.
point, you're just like, I'm here. I'm
Right.
in. Like, this is it.
Exactly.
There's no turning back.
Yeah, and you walk in, and I'm a jail guy. I've been in a lot of jails across the United States, seeing what they do, best practices. This was a serious jail. The
Yeah.
worst jail I've ever seen is in Los Angeles, but this was by far, and not because it's the Los Angeles jail, the conditions of which the inmates are in, and also the type of inmates that they have, because they have the Mexican Mafia, they
Yeah.
have MS-13, they have 18th Street, they have the Bloods, they have the Crips.
Yeah, and you have to make sure, obviously, separating them, because then there's gang wars that concur internally, no?
Well, you don't want to separate them. You want to balance out the power in the housing area. So if I have 5 MS, 5 18th Street, 5 Bloods, 5 Crips, 5 Latin Kings, 5 Nietas, the balance of power is all
Gotcha.
amongst that. But if I have 15 of one and 5 of another, and 5
Yeah,
of
you're in
another,
trouble.
yeah, we don't want them to plot against the correction staff either, but let alone dominate the phone, dominate food, dominate what they watch on TV, or anything like that.
It's incredible what you have to think about internally. That's what I mean. It's like it's its own world.
Yes.
I'm fascinated with that. Was there, surrounding the prison, were there like turrets or people up? Were there towers around it?
There were towers. There were also, it was specially designed. This jail was built in 9 months for $130 million. And it was built with the purpose of making sure that they housed not only just MS-13 or 18th Street, but high-level members of those organizations. So they don't have lower-level people in this particular jail. It is the most secure prison, so much so that all production of buildings in San Salvador and El Salvador was stopped because of the amount of concrete they needed to build it.
Wow.
So it was very interesting that in 9 months they built a $130 million jail with technology and security measures all around it.
Yeah, I was gonna say you walk right in, you immediately see all this technology and security.
Oh yes, right in the way new admission inmates come in, the screening to medical, into the housing area, specifically in CCOT. Now there are 70,000 people that are incarcerated in the El Salvadorian system. Only 12,000 of them are inside this jail.
Wow, that's incredible. Do they do a full body scan to make sure there's nothing hiding? Like if someone tries to hide something, beforehand, or
Yes.
they
Yes, they do that, and there are cameras all around the facility. And I can tell you that they're not afraid, meaning the staff are not afraid of these inmates.
Yeah, I feel like that they would like. Their communities were terrorized
Yeah.
for years. Now it's finally like it's our turn to show you that you don't terrorize us any longer, right? It's almost like that emboldenedness where finally we're at equal footing.
Right, and I've heard of people here in the United States, specifically in Suffolk County, that I went there, have told me that they're moving back because now they feel comfortable. But one thing I failed to mention is that while I was in that jail, I came across one individual from Huntington.
Okay.
He was deported.
Wow.
And someone else that was in this Los Angeles Sheriff's County Jail,
Deported.
who was deported also. He had 2 people. And also there's supposedly, from what the staff was telling us, there's a gang inside of the jail that calls themselves Brentwood.
Really?
Yeah.
Does Brentwood still have a presence then in Suffolk County?
I think, well, do you mean MS-13 have a presence? in
No,
Suffolk?
like that Brentwood. I guess that Brentwood gang or of MS-13.
We found that they're scattered throughout the entire county.
They are.
It's just not,
Okay.
of
It's not
course,
consolidated.
right, but there are certain pockets that have more
Mm-hmm.
gangs. But I think the one thing that a lot of people fail to remember is that the Bloods are the biggest gang in our jail, the biggest gang, and I mean in numbers,
Mm-hmm.
biggest gang in Nassau County, and the biggest gang in New York City. There's so many subsets of the Bloods that there are more Blood gang members in any of our jails than there are MS-13.
I didn't know that at all.
Yes.
I would have thought MS-13 dominates.
No.
Oh wow! So that's why it's so even. That's incredible. I don't know how you do that with everything. So the communication now going forward between Suffolk County and El Salvador, are they disclosing to you about, hey, these types of gangs are thriving now? This is what you should be seeing. This is they're heading to they're trying to head to your direction. Anything the sort like that?
Yes, and they gave us a document. I would say it's about 45 to 50 pages of their 2023 assessment of MS-13. And so they were very open and transparent in discussing their challenges, but the successes that they've had with the successes of the reduction in crime and MS-13 fleeing El Salvador to other countries. And that's why Ecuador
Right.
and Honduras are having such challenges right now.
See that now they're on the watch,
Right.
so they have to gear up for what's next.
Correct.
Very interesting to see how this is why it's important to do everything as a unit, because if you're going to be suiting up in security, they're going to be pushed. The criminals will be pushed to another territory that's going to enable them.
Right.
And that's what's so key, is that even the United States has to be aware of that, where that's why we have to deter the bad conduct and mischievous people and these criminals, then enable them to come here to feel like that they can then get away with their crimes or their acts.
Exactly.
It's very important. I find that fascinating, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office now develops from that information you learn and the ongoing growth that you'll gain from that information. So over the next years, which is incredible that you made that journey to establish that even that ability to learn and that information.
It's a tremendous partnership. I think it'll benefit in keeping the residents of Suffolk County safe.
Well, I have to say, Suffolk County Sheriff Errol Toulon Jr., it has been an absolute privilege. I've enjoyed this thoroughly, just to get even just an overview of everything that you do, everything that you've done, what you're doing. Still can't believe that you have this Center Ave trailer that still has been identifying the most crucial drug issues and beyond. And that's a testament to who you are, where you make it work. You don't say no. You just it's about getting it done.
Thank you.
So actions speak louder than words, my friend. And for you've lived a career of action, and I appreciate it immensely. And I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me on.
I appreciate it.